Well, welcome everybody to the SaaStock webinar 2024. My name is Sita Kelsey. I'm the event director for SaaStock USA. SaaStock USA is coming up on the 13th, 14th and 15th of May in Austin at the Palmer Center. It's the second year that we've come to Austin and we're moving to the Palmer Convention Center. We'll be hosting founders from pre-seed through to Series A, B, and C, plus investors, operators, C-suite. If you don't know what SaaStock USA is about and you've logged onto the webinar to find out a little bit more, just for a bit of information, we have 3 amazing days lined up. The first day, day 0, we have some great pre-event activities. So we'll have SaaS City, which is a series of boot camps for founders and operators, really focused on leveling up skill sets all around revenue and retention, founder fundamentals, and marketing masterclasses. We'll have our investor-only day SaaStock, which is a closed-door networking event for investors, all around one-to-one meetings and speaking with each other on really valuable roundtables. And then we'll also have the startup program, which is open to pre-seed and seed startups. And that includes coaching, masterclasses, and a pitching competition. The winner will receive a $200K prize. And then we will have our 2 main conference days. So we've got loads of amazing content stages, roundtables, breakfast briefings for founders, marketing, product, revenue leaders, one-to-one meetings, and we'll also have a live podcast stage as well. But those 2 days are really focused on bringing attendees incredible insights about lessons learned, practical advice from founders about how to scale and grow their business. So they've been in your very position. So we've got speakers such as the president of Klaviyo, the CRO from Xero, CMO from GitLab, co-founder and CEO of 37 Signals. And we also have some amazing investors lined up to talk about fundraising, one of which are on the call today, from Bessemer Ventures, Battery Ventures, and Excel. But SaaStock is also known for being able to host a good time for our attendees. So we'll have some amazing social and networking events throughout the week, including our welcome party, sponsored by Paddle, SAP, and WorldPay. We'll have our fringe events, including a pickleball tournament, a speakeasy happy hour, and also a 5K run. So there's lots and lots of stuff going on. But to focus on today and why we've hosted the webinar, we've got some of our amazing speakers from the lineup in a couple of weeks, Alison, Jake, and Okan, who are going to really speak on some of the key challenges that some of our attendees who are registered to attend have fed back that they're looking for insights and advice and guidance on. So these amazing panelists will give you a bit of a flavor as to what to expect from the show in a couple of weeks' time. So if you stick around, we will, for anyone that hasn't registered a ticket, we'll be giving a discount code to attendees at the end of the webinar. So enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Alison Murdock, our moderator today, who is the founder and CEO at Trusted CMO. Over to you, Alison.
Thanks. Hi, everyone out in the virtual world. Thanks for joining us today. It's my pleasure to speak about and moderate this topic in preparation for SaaStock in Austin. So quickly, as Sita said, I am the founder, chief marketer, sometimes CEO of Trusted CMO, founded 5 years ago. I have been a CMO and a marketing leader for many, many years in Silicon Valley and in Europe. And the reason why I started this company is because I found that early stage companies got started with their go-to-market motion and especially marketing way too late. So that is what the problem we solve. And with that, I'm going to turn it over next to Okan from Bullhound, GP Bullhound. Hopefully I pronounced your name right.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Okan Inaltay. I'm a software-focused director at GP Bullhound. For those of you who are not familiar, we are a technology-focused advisory and investment firm that provides transaction advice as well as capital to entrepreneurs and founders globally. I sit on our advisory side of our business, and I'm joining you from San Francisco today. For the past 10 plus years, I have had the privilege and the responsibility of advising many SaaS founders on M&A and fundraising situations, and quite excited about the topics today. But before we dive in, I would love to introduce you with Jake. Hi, Jake.
Hey, looking forward to the conversation. It should be a fun one. Got 14 very engaged people. So I always say in these things, be selfish, ask questions as well. I'm Jake Dunlap. I'm the CEO of Skaled Consulting. We're a 30+ person revenue operations consulting business. What that really means is we help growing organizations, get their act together as they're scaling. That operations is sometimes an afterthought until it's not. And then you want to continue to grow and scale. And you say, how do we do that? Because we don't have repeatable processes, our tech stack's broken. And, we've been doing this, for 11+ years, worked with thousands of organizations at every step of the process. And so I'm going to be speaking at SaaStock. I've got 2 sessions, they let me up there twice, but they had to pair me with Kevin Dorsey for one. We'll be doing a workshop talking about modern customer journeys and what customers want around speed and customization. And then myself and Kevin Dorsey on day 2, we'll be talking about generative AI and how revenue organizations are implementing it. And so you'll get a tease to some of that on this conversation. So looking forward to the talk and joining this esteemed group.
Great. Well, thank you for the intros. So let's talk a little bit about the sort of the future. We're not going to go into Gen AI yet. It's too early for that. We've got to warm up first. But I am curious, I'm going to start with you, Jake, because you work with so many companies, been around for a long time. Like, what are you, seeing currently, companies adapting to sort of the go-to-market climate at the moment, which has been, last year was a really challenging year. I think we're starting to come out of it, but, what are some of the things that they're asking you to do to support their growth?
Yeah, I'll say that there's just a few trends that I think, we are, hopefully at the forefront of optimizing for companies. One is this concept of like, is outbound dead, right? Or is outbound not working? And the answer is like, no, it's not. But what's not working is hitting send all and expecting to hit your numbers, right? Mm-hmm. So like a big part of people's go-to-market motion, especially in the early on, and look, you come at this from the CMO Alison angle, so I don't need to tell you. We had a nice little run where we could send these templated emails. They don't work anymore. And so, for companies to scale, we've got to realize that scalable does not equal automated. And we've got to kind of like flip back a little bit to think about how do we build scalable outbound, where we've got, other tools, AI in the loop, and then the human is doing the QA, the connection with like this persona, et cetera. And then the other trend that, I'll talk about later, I think even in more depth, is just, B2B is still running the same plays as they've ran for 20 years, but our consumer buying has changed dramatically. And right now, most B2B buying processes are one size fits all. Like whether you come in and you've talked to 3 people at SaaStock, you vetted the tool on your own, you got pricing, you start back at the beginning. And we've got to start to create more dynamic customer journeys because more and more people are going to demand it of like, I do not want to hop on a call. I don't want to talk to a person. Like 44%
everything
of
to
millennials
avoid talking to sales.
44% of millennials say that they would prefer a salesperson less experience. And that's okay. That's still, a big chunk of people that want to, but we just have to have differentiated sales journeys. And I think B2B has like really been archaic in its deployment of, more customized journeys versus how we want to sell. So I think that those concepts there about building scalable human in the loop processes to make outbound work. And then how do we start to meet customers where they are? Those are really the big things that I'm spending a lot of time on.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. Just a quick commentary before I move to Okan. I work with Lean Data, actually. I'm their fractional CMO, and we are very bullish on movement about buying groups, which is, we've had buying committees in B2B enterprise forever, but it's really the buyer journey that's changed so much. The education's happening, 90% of it before they even talk to sales. So I think that is really, you've got a great point there, and it's something that we've got to change people's mind about. So look forward to digging into that further also at the conference. So Okan, what, in terms of, what you're hearing from your perspective on from startups or from companies that are seeking investment, what are you seeing from a go-to-market strategy? Where are some of the stress points that you hear about?
We're seeing more and more from the investor point of view, a demand for more efficiencies, operational efficiencies, and focus on profitability versus kind of just top line growth. And the way that, we advise entrepreneurs when we help them on kind of thinking through fundraising processes is to find ways to leverage AI, leverage other tools or methods to streamline some of the go-to-market strategies just Jake talked about. Because when you look at a P&L of a SaaS business, about 30 or 40% of the revenue is typically spent on sales or marketing, and any improvements that you can make that will eventually hit to your bottom line, and that's kind of a key focus on these days.
Yeah, I think one of the, from my perspective, I work with companies of a lot of different, many different sizes, and what I'm seeing is somewhat similar to what you were saying, Okan, is, and I actually have to come in because the B2B buying journey is like been templated for the last 20 years, is say, this marketing team is not connected to pipeline. They're doing like random things in silos and going, well, I'm pumping out the content. I'm like, yeah, but is that working? Is that being used in a sales sequence? So I think there's a shift of, I think from a leadership standpoint, we need to find those anchors and those KPIs and that kind of connection to whatever you're doing at this company, it has to come back to revenue. Like brand, yes. And brand is important because the door will not open for you if no one knows who the hell you are, or like why you exist, or how you're different from X, Y, and Z. I heard an interesting stat the other day. Pavilion had their big event, and I can't recall the company that put the research together. But essentially it was like most buyers surveyed that find it so difficult to even consider companies when they're looking to make a purchase, because companies make it so difficult to differentiate themselves. Part of that, and I want to talk about Gen AI, is the fault of Gen AI. I think Gen AI is an amazing thing. I just don't think as humans, we know how to use it very well. Like, I love it when it's baked into a product and there is some level of automation, but the stuff that's going up on websites that people are using ChatGPT for, or similar, it's making it worse. There's nothing unique. This is my point of view. This probably won't last forever. I'm just seeing it now and it makes me just want to die. So Jake, what do you think about the stewardship in Gen AI?
I think we're too focused on stewardship and not enough about like just getting like implementing it and figuring out like its amazing potential. Like ChatGPT it's not a new marketing or sales tool. It is a foundational shift in how human beings solve problems.
Totally.
And so to me, most revenue organizations are trying to come up with a Gen AI strategy as opposed to thinking, okay, in our current processes, how our BDRs work, where can ChatGPT or custom GPTs or specific agents immediately make an impact? Yes. And okay, looking at our sales process and the bottlenecks. And so and I think we're one of the leaders in this kind of talk track around how revenue orgs use ChatGPT. We've been, putting out content about this since, early last summer. What we boiled it down is like, it's not about this generative AI strategy. It's where the two areas that we start. And typically it's prep and research activities. It is amazing at that. Synthesizing information, insights, putting it together in a little package to where me as a seller used to have to take however long, and now I can do it in 10 minutes really well. Same thing for like wanting to put together industry insights, not trying to get it to write me the email, but give me the industry snippets of what's a VP of operations in industrial manufacturing's top 3 trends for right now. And being able to take a snippet to make me sound like an industry expert. And then you can say, make it more jargony. And then it's like, yeah, if you're ISO, blah, blah, blah. And like, so I believe that there's kind of very specific use cases. And so companies need to stop thinking you need to come up with this big stewardship, generative AI strategy. Having ChatGPT is better than not having it, right? Yeah. It's like the internet. It's like, yes, will people go to inappropriate sites on your work computer? Maybe, but does that mean we're going to shut down the internet for everybody else? Absolutely not. And so I just think we've got to get off our seats here. And too many revenue leaders have outsourced their knowledge of technology to sales ops for too long. And this is not a sales or marketing or revenue technology. It is a foundational shift in problem solving. And
Yes.
you as an executive have to fire yourself for a week and go learn this stuff. So I
Agreed.
am extremely adamant and passionate about it. We infuse it in every part of our organization, and the productivity gains are substantial. So
Yeah, I concur. And it's sort of shocking sometimes when people go, well, how do I know this? Or can you send me this report? And it's like, get on ChatGPT and just ask for it, you know? Like, and I think it's also really interesting. This is less about our go-to-market, but another company I work with is data.world. They're more on they released a product called AI Context Engine. So it's based on a knowledge graph that has internal data. So if you're in RevOps, you know, what did MQLs look like last week? Or what did, you know, how long is our sales cycle? You can get that kind of information from your data. And I think that's also really exciting, like the go and fetch capabilities. Okan, what are you in your world, in terms of the companies you're working with? What are you seeing with Gen AI? What are some of the trends and ways that your companies are leaning in?
Well, I mean, ChatGPT, you know, as I concur with both of you, I mean, it's great. But I think figuring out the right use cases to go to which Gen AI channel, whether you want to go to ChatGPT or Google's Gemini or Perplexity AI, I believe they all serve for different use cases and different types of searches. Like, for example, if you're looking for more of a research-driven results, I would recommend like Perplexity AI. And Google's Gemini is obviously most current information through Google, and ChatGPT, if you're not using the premium, might give you some downsides. Well, the companies that we typically work with are leveraging various AI tools and AI innovators to make their lead prospecting, make their customer engagement, make their forecasting processes and customer retention, all that. They are rethinking that through by leveraging some of these amazing startups that are coming up and leveraging AI to disrupt those channels. And that eventually adds up to the bottom line of the businesses, make them more profitable. And obviously that trickles down to the investors and making bigger investments into those companies.
I want to move to the topic on fundraising, but before we depart, just based on what Jake, you said, and also what you're seeing, Okan, is what do you think the go-to-market teams are going to look like from an experience standpoint? The next set of optimal content marketers, product marketer, demand, what qualities should they have?
Creativity. If you do not have if your job has been reduced to pushing buttons or following a qualification framework in the revenue org, your job it's not going to be around. Whether you write content, whether you do inbound management, outbound management, the human in the loop is to interpret and add insights. And yes, generative AI in particular is amazing at that, but the ability to manipulate the last mile is where human beings, we're going to have an advantage for at least the next, 4 or 5 years. After that, we'll have to talk in a few years, but you have to really analyze your job. And if your job, you will be shocked at just how much of what you think is proprietary to your brain is not proprietary to your brain.
Yeah.
And therefore, if the general knowledge can get 80% of the way there and continue to get better, Sam Altman said, I think it's about a month ago, he said, ChatGPT-4, he's embarrassed by it because of just how much better ChatGPT-5 is going to be, right? And so we are at the beginning of this journey. And so I would just encourage everyone to really analyze the roles that they have. And if these roles are pushing buttons, doing super repetitive tasks, those will be the first to go.
Yeah, I think also it's up to whoever is on that team currently to do that. Give these people a day off so they can learn how to use Gen AI in their jobs. Agreed. What do you think, Okan, in terms of from your perspective, what do you think go-to-market teams are looking like to help company?
100% on the same page with Jake. I mean, I think creating content has become a commodity with Gen AI. So it's more about how do you edit it to get it to a point where it is differentiated, where it is adding a ton of value to the audience, as opposed to, when I go to LinkedIn these days, a lot of the posts seem very similar to each other and it's less engaging from that point of view. So how do you differentiate yourself with those creative points that takes you to the next stage? Because organizations will no longer need those larger marketing teams or sales teams, etc. I assume in a couple of years, everybody will be extremely efficient and familiar with using these Gen AI tools and other AI tools and solutions. So you need to be kind of thinking a step ahead and finding ways to streamline your operations. Otherwise, you'll be outdated soon.
Yeah, I have a similar perspective, but from a different lens, which is I've been thinking about for the last year saying creativity is coming back. It's coming back because there's a lot of sameness in different market segments that I work with. And, if finding different ways, whether it's through video or just your positioning to stand out is going to become so important. And I think brand is back to, again, the sameness, the button pushing, pricing is more transparent. Like there's nothing that's helping you stand out. So I'm going to switch to the next topic, which is around fundraising. So, Okan, I'm going to start with you. Last year was terrible for many VCs, certainly for LPs, not getting the returns. I've heard things like major firms, VC firms are letting their operating partners go. They're getting rid of their platform plays. Anything that kind of eats away at carry. This is all hearsay and conversations. What do you see?
Well, the fundraising industry is a mixed bag at the moment. On one hand, economic uncertainty, rising interest rates, inflation, geopolitical tensions that are all made investors a lot more cautious, leading to valuation gap between the expectations of the entrepreneurs to the value the investors do see. I mean, I saw a stat somewhere that said, less than 1% of the companies who applied for VC funding recently ended up receiving it, less than 1%. And, the bar for a Series A, for example, has definitely increased from less than $1 million of ARR in the historical years to, say, 2 or 3 million of ARR today. And investors are demanding, better terms. I started seeing more and more liquidation preferences coming into play. So my recommendation here for entrepreneurs who are considering their options is to consider alternative funding options like debt financing, revenue-based financing to gain traction and find, alternative ways to bridge that gap. Companies like CapChase, FounderPath, etc. are interesting here. And my belief is that this short-term pain will result into a long-term success as the companies are returning to their fundamentals and creating kind of long-term, more healthy companies. We will soon see, a long-term benefit of that with companies that are operating at, 30+% operating margins, highly profitable, high growth, and this is going to eventually lead up to those kind of giants coming up. But today we are obviously facing some of the pains.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the way it has been VC, and I'm very happy to actually see alternative funding mechanisms for companies. It's kind of like the real estate industry, when you got into long leases in San Francisco, and then there was WeWork. Now, we won't talk about WeWork, but it was a good idea at the time. How about you, Jake? Are you encountering much on the fundraising side? I imagine that you have to get companies ready to raise the next round and make sure their operations are squeaky clean and so forth. What are you seeing?
Yeah, and we work with a ton of private equity companies as well too. Have kind of always been operating with like, how about a path to funding called learn how to make money profitably? Wow, like holy shit, like that's a crazy idea. Like, I think what we see, 2021 was insane. It'll probably happen again in another 10 years. Yeah. But 2021 was just, there's all that, just pent up cash that made all these companies think that they're world beating, that just weren't. And then, we thought 2022, the start wasn't bad. Then it started to fall off. 2023 is like, it can't be that bad. So I think what we're seeing, like, again, because we work with a lot of CEOs and sales leaders, like targets and expectations are getting a little bit more realistic. Like, this is the first year I've heard sales leaders being like, like our goals are somewhat stretched, but for once they're actually like achievable. So I think, if you're thinking about raising funds right now, you need to figure out how am I going to build a profitable business, which my friends, that is the whole point of business. And so I think what happened is the VC culture kind of got way too far away from this for a long time. And I would say Europe has always been better about this. The Europe in particular has always had a higher bar for like how successful the companies have to be. But I think I think you hit it on the head there. It's like, what's going to happen is when you learn how to like, hey, we've got to build a profitable business. When things start, that's going to make you even stronger when you get that 20 million, right? Like now you know how to crank a machine that's profitable, not crank a machine that's throw bodies at it. Because that has been the formula for VCs. If you get hired as a CMO or a head of sales, here's what they do. Here's your forecast. Go hit the forecast. Here's what the forecast looks like. And I can just tell you because I've built this. It's like head count, quota, minus churn, roll up. That's how you're going to get there. It's bodies. And so now we're saying, hey, how are we going to get there more like productive? How are we going to increase productivity? Not just throw more bodies at it. So the beautiful part that's going to come out is we're going to learn how to scale companies. And the solution isn't throw more bodies at it, which has been how in B2B SaaS, almost every successful sales leader was successful, is they got raised enough money, threw enough bodies at it. And I think that's the beautiful part about what's happening. We've got to figure out how to be productive early, and then we can scale productivity, which equals profitability. So that's I think the big positive out of all this.
Yeah, I would say, my point of view, the throw bodies at it. This is why, in my work, when they're like, okay, who should I hire? I'm talking to this guy from Salesforce. I said, no, that's a no. Do not hire this person. I'm sure this is a nice person. Guess what? They're used to having 19 people do one thing that they don't want to do. Hire someone who understands how to build a business. You don't need to throw bodies at it. You need a demand function. You need content. This is for go-to-market on the marketing side. You need a product marketer, and that's it. That's really the power trio right there. You don't need to throw more. When people say I need to hire someone, I said, to do what? Like, I love customer marketing, and I think customer marketing is great, but why do you need one separate person to just only do that? Do you have that many customers? If you do, that's awesome. But I think there's a great rethink, and one of the things that I'm seeing, on both the investor side. So I'm an LP in a fund called Market One, and their thesis is they only work with companies and invest in companies that have a go-to-market motion, defensible, proven product they're like, this is our go-to-market motion, and I love that because without that, and because I've seen so many train wrecks, and like, let's just hire the guy from Salesforce. I'm like, all of that is wrong. You have not thought about your business. You have not thought about how to optimize it. You have not empowered the rest of your team to think about revenue. So I agree, Jake, that, things are changing and there is a bit of a great reckoning. And if you deserve to have a company and you're selling well, you also deserve to have some money. So that's nice to have alternative, vehicles for financing, because the VC track is hard. It's very distracting. So.
And the good news is, I'm receiving calls and emails almost every day from investors that are looking to deploy their capital into high quality SaaS companies, regardless of their stage. Like last year, close to 50% of the VC money in total went to SaaS startups. So, led by US, China, and the UK. So there's definitely a lot of interest into deploying more capital into high quality companies. It's just about you as a founder to figure out, how do I differentiate myself? And to Jake and Alison's points, how do I create a business that is efficient and effective, not just kind of hiring more buddies towards finding out the solution?
Yeah, I think that's right. I imagine that, in the SaaS industry, there's millions of SaaS companies. One question I had for you, Okan, because of your you see a lot of different companies. Are there any industries specifically? So when we talk about things like Gen AI, like it's going to be in every single product to some capacity. So, and they're the enablers that are very powerful right now. There's the big long list of them. But what are you seeing, any sort of vertical market trends of companies that are getting funding, or?
Yeah. There are definitely certain industries that have a ton of tailwinds from an investor point of view. Those are kind of ESG, like environmental, social, and governance focused companies, or healthcare focused, cybersecurity. There's also a demand for specialized solutions versus more of a comprehensive point solutions. So vertical SaaS is strong. data is king. So anyone who is kind of leveraging the data to improve the products and or better ways to service their customers using data, those companies are getting a lot of attention these days from the investor community.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is there an example that you could give us of a company like that?
Well, for example, EcoWad is a company that I had the privilege of advising, where we helped them raise $200 million from CVC. They were focused on ESG ratings for businesses, leveraging data, leveraging research. We then helped them raise a subsequent $550 million from investors. So when an investor sees a flying wheel in a space that they believe has a long-term potential to disrupt any industry, that's when they are willing to put their money, hard-earned money into that company.
Yeah. What would be Okan, sort of if you were trying to raise funds and we kind of close off on this topic in today's market, what are some things that you as counseling them on investment, but also potentially putting money in, what would be the like 3 things that they must do in order to kind of gain your attention and also prove viability as a company?
Well, be data driven. Reach out to me for our SaaS metrics template, but understand your SaaS metrics, understand your unit economics. Markets are rewarding companies that have that growth and profitability at the same time, about 60% more premium value in terms of valuation to those they don't. So understanding your ARR per employee and Rule of 40 and how does that track against your competition is key. Secondly, identifying and focusing on your core ICP and trying to find ways to add them long-term value, which typically results in high net dollar retention rates and higher average contract values. And then finally, exploring strategic partnerships early on and drive that revenue channel through strategic partnership, not just focus on direct to consumer. I think those are the 3 main headlines that I would recommend.
Oh, thank you. Those are very good ones. How about you, Jake? What you're working closely with them as they're raising funds or trying to get a next round. I imagine you'd recommend some of the same things, but what else do you say?
Well, yeah, I mean, and I'll even I think I'll double down quickly on the know your buyer. I think that's a really big part of this, which is, you're not best for finance, you're best for regional banks, because payment companies are different than regional banks and they're all finance. And I think not enough companies are spending really enough time getting really tight, both from marketing and sales, on like the real personas that they serve and like who's the best fit today versus, for forever. But I'd say, look, there's 3 things, and this is going to be very basic, but the order of operations matters too. Number 1, have you figured out a repeatable way to generate leads? That's it. Number 2, have you figured out a repeatable process for how to generate sales? Ideally not founder-led. Great. Number 3, do you have a repeatable process to proactively, retain or grow accounts? That's it. Like, you can focus on anything else you want, but if you can do those things, and I would argue, now I'm an LP in stage 2 capital, and we are very heavy on retention. Like, so we invest purely based on, like, that's a big part of this is like, do you know how to keep companies? But early on, it's like, well, we only have 20, right? So if you're really early, it's like the first one is most important, because once you figure out how to generate meetings at some level of scale, whether it's marketing or sales, like, great, now we can figure out how to close those at scale, and then we can figure out how to retain them. So if you just focus as you grow, almost like down the funnel, because it's like, if you can't generate net new, like through partners or through direct, like, or marketing, like, you don't have a business. So I feel like, if you really focus on that, okay, we've figured out part of the lead gen. We've got like somewhat of the beginnings. Great. Now let's go figure out the sales flywheel. Now we've got enough customers. Let's figure out that handoff process and that. And I think if most companies would just stick to that fundamental, they would not have a problem raising money. It's that they want to sell on the hope and the dream and the story, and that you just can't raise on that as much anymore. Sometimes you can, but
Yeah, I am very much of the mindset that, and I'm just going to classify it as operations is highly underrated at companies. You know, my personal experience, I often get brought in and, you know, I'm talking to a CEO and they're like, oh my God, we need top of funnel. We need top of funnel. I'm like, well, what have you been getting?
Every CEO.
Every CEO. And he said, it was through paid. We're just paid. We're spending $15,000 a month on paid. And I said, and how many leads? Well, we're getting 3 or 4 pretty good ones, but that's it. I'm not kidding. I'm like, so you're pissing away $15,000 a month to get 3 maybe top of funnel leads. I had one client that did this. They had pools of sitting in Salesforce. They never talked to them. They maybe took a meeting once. They're just sitting there. And I'm like, how about, forget about top of funnel. Your outbound guys are getting that. How about nurture? How about nurture? Because these people know you already now. See, and if we just send them, so we sent anyway, we sent out a campaign, 1 email, 60% open rate, 3 requests for demos in 24 hours. I'm like, so there you go. Let's close the deal. How about not just top of funnel? It's amazing, you know, like because I really buy into what you say, which is it sounds simple, but if you could just stick to that plan, you'd be fine. So anyway, okay. So the last question I think we've already talked about demystifying AI in the SaaS industry, but it comes up again in the last question. Do we have anything more to add on this? Any favorite companies? If you could pick one.
ChatGPT times 5,000. Like, yes, Perplexity, like ChatGPT is the only one that has custom GPTs. And for a lot of you are like, Jake, why does that matter? Custom GPTs are agents that you can program for very specific use cases, which like, this is my discovery prep. That's all it does. And it's pre-programmed. This is my this, and it's all within your ChatGPT. And so there's certain pieces like that are better at certain things, but there's like pound for pound, ChatGPT is at the top because of custom GPTs. That's my experience and what we're seeing in the Rev Org. And my only advice I have left is if you are an executive listening, you cannot afford to not fire. This is what I did last summer. I went to my company and I said, guys, I'm firing myself as CEO for 3 or 4 days. I need to just go figure out what this is possible. And the rabbit holes that I went down have transformed the way that my whole company solves problems. And so if you're an executive, it's like, you know, if you were used to going to the library in 2000 or you had encyclopedias in 1998, and then you had to learn how Google search worked, this happened. There was a whole slew, like we already went through this, like you have to take the time, and it's not just a couple of hours. Like the possibilities are truly mind-blowing once you start to go down the path. So invest in yourselves. Yes, you might be 20 years into your career, 30 years into your career, but you need to go do a hard reset. You need to understand what these tools are capable of. And that would be my kind of like plea to everybody listening. Like, it's that worth it, right? I'll give you your time back somehow if it's not, but.
Well, you know, well, but Jake, I mean, to avoid going down the rabbit hole, like you clearly are technically, you know, very savvy, you know, you've already been sort of watching this, but, you know, a CEO at a startup who probably should fire themselves for a few days and go down. How would you identify areas, gaps that could be filled by ChatGPT? Do you understand?
Prep and research is the easiest one. Like, okay, like let's say, you know, you're trying to book a meeting, right? And ChatGPT is amazing at saying, and let's say you sell to mid-market or something. Hey, you can literally upload the attachments from the last 2 annual reports, say, hey, here are the last 2 annual reports from this company. I try to sell to VPs of operations at this company. Here's a link to our website. That's all you have to do. What are the top 3 trends they're talking about year over year that are applicable to what we do? Enter. I'm literally copying and pasting and uploading, like, and it will analyze this. It would take you 2 hours. So like any type of research-based activity, that's where you start. And we've looked at, there's a lot of like training and onboarding. I'm confident now we can ramp sales reps in 1/3 of the time because I can get them at bats with personas and sub-industries. So number 1 is prep and research. Look at where research and customization of that research can move the needle, whether it's in generating meetings, discovery meetings, putting together proposals. And then once you start to get familiar, like, oh, and then it just kind of like your brain starts to realize like there's all these other use cases too. But prep and research is the easy one.
Yeah. Yeah. What, just a quick question. What about, discovery of your own, like, let's say, so RevOps is something that we often work very closely with RevOps teams because we're on the marketing, when we're on the whole go-to-market side. If I wanted to get data about, what I was describing earlier with one of my clients, where do you think that is? Like, if I'm a CEO and I'm going, oh my God, we have, our marketing database size, and we have our, our SaaS metrics we're keeping. Like, if you wanted to just understand what was underneath the number that was reported, like any kind of insights, do you think that anytime soon ChatGPT would be useful in that way?
Yeah, right now it's not great at like general search and cross analysis without you giving it to like
Okay.
right now you can't say like, hey, go look at, I mean, what you can do is say, hey, go look at these two websites and tell me the unique differentiators between these companies, right? It can do that, right? But it's not as good right now. I mean, if you download the data, and again, you attach it and you create a custom GPT that's called, you are my outsourced CFO, these are your instructions, then, it can do that. But I think there's other tools, like most of what we're seeing in the Rev org are these tools that are designed to like better forecast, better do that. So there's a lot of like out of the box tools that are trying to leverage it that are probably better at that piece. But nobody's really solving this, like, how do I have better interaction with my customers or work smarter piece that where ChatGPT can solve. So I'd say that there's probably better tools out there that are focused on just that problem, that as opposed to ChatGPT.
Got it. Thank you. Okan, any final words before we wrap up on the AI and your point of view in your industry, actually, how it could help you?
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at it more holistically, like every line item in your P&L, whether it is sales and marketing, R&D, or G&A, when it's kind of legal costs, recruiting, HR, all of these are being disrupted by AI. And there are companies who are kind of innovating and leveraging ChatGPT and other AI technologies to disrupt those kind of specific verticals. So I think it's important for a founder or CEO of a SaaS business today to understand and get to know those kind of innovators and build those relationships early so that they can find that kind of 10, 15, 20% of efficiency in that specific line item, which flows down to your bottom line. That would be kind of my closing remark. I see AI companies transforming, for example, the general and administrative costs to like value centers.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be interesting to see how all this unfolds, but I really, appreciate everyone's points of view on, to help these young companies grow and to think more critically, and not do stupid stuff. So that's our job to help them. And thank you both for being part of this webinar. And I look forward to meeting you in Austin coming up. So I think that was my to round us up. So Sita's coming back to say a couple of final words, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much to Jake, to Alison, to Okan for joining us today. As Alison said, come join us for 2 weeks. As Jake said, use SaaStock USA to upskill yourself, relearn, better yourself. I'm going to drop an exclusive discount for the participants of today's webinar in the chat. It's a 25% discount off your ticket. So if you haven't purchased yet, I would strongly advise you do that. And we will be sending up a follow-up with the recording of today's session and more information. So we hope to see you there in a couple of weeks. But for now, thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the attendees for coming today, and have a great rest of your day.